discipline update process. Rosalind, would you like to introduce that discussion topic?
Sure. Thank you. So recently, we've been having a lot of conversation about discipline. We've been hearing concerns from our community. There was a 5th, 6th grade meeting, and then there was a general meeting with the school about discipline. And what happened, I got very concerned about some of the incidents that I heard about, either from other parents or that were referenced in the meetings. I watched both the 5th and 6th grade meeting, and I watched the general. I was present for the general meeting.
In 2 miles, take the exit toward Ida B. Wells Drive and Eisenhower Expressway.
On the CPS dashboard, for our school, we don't have statistics entered for discipline. And so this concerns me, especially since we're going into principal evaluation season. One of the questions on that evaluation is how safe the school environment is. And it occurred to me that we rely very heavily on academic data in performing our duties in evaluating the principal, but we have absolutely positively no discipline data whatsoever that we use in our evaluation of the principal, as well as responding to concerns in the community. I don't want to go into the details now. I know there are differences of opinion as to why that data does not get put into Aspen. And I do agree that some of that is valid. Okay. But nevertheless, I feel like the LSC, we need ongoing discipline data in order to do our job. So I am asking that we ask Mr. Graves that he give us monthly updates as to, similar to what he did tonight, as to what discipline events have happened in the school since the last meeting. And so that's what I had asked for it to be put on the agenda for tonight.
Is that it, Rosalind? I didn't want to cut you off. So, to clarify, if we're going to make a motion, I guess first, did you want to make a motion?
Okay. So, I'm willing to make a motion, but I kind of wanted to hear discussion first in case there were questions to clarify, because I know some of the conversations I've had with people is, well, what discipline data are you asking for Graves to report? And I wanted to hear from council members. Do you want to hear the whole kit and caboodle, or do you want him to focus on more of like the high level 3, 4, and 5 infractions, like he did tonight?
Okay, so I guess Zoe, I see that you have a hand up. Was it about clarifying what we're writing in the minutes, or was it something separate?
No, I had a question, but go ahead, finish your thought.
Oh, I was going to say that maybe just to preserve like our typical meeting structure and what we're supposed to do, we can make a motion based on what you last said, Rosalind, which was making a motion to have Mr. Graves present a monthly data report update, and just leave it at that. And then that gives some flexibility to then hear council discussion, and then it gives Mr. Graves some flexibility to go back to Ms. Rowland after this meeting and shape what that would look like and continue to collaborate with the council. But that would just be my thought as like a starting point. We can obviously amend that motion as discussion takes place. Does that sound reasonable, Rosalind, as a starting point?
Okay, I could make a more specific motion, and then based on the council discussion, we can amend it if necessary. Okay, so I'd like to make a motion that beginning April of 2022, that Mr. Graves provides the LSC with a monthly discipline update of categories 3, 4, and 5 in the student code of conduct during the LSC meeting.
Okay, just to open discussion, I'll second the motion. And then Zoe, what was going to be your question?
Well, no, that helps. That helps my understanding then, Rosalind, because I was gonna say, I was like, if it's gonna be across the whole thing, I was just like, from a teacher standpoint, that could be, no offense, Mr. Graves, that could be like his whole report with like, that can end up a lot of slides about level 1, 2 things that, happen in the classroom. So that helps clarify after your emotion, Rosalind.
John.
Yeah, I'm feeling sandbagged by emotion that wasn't on the agenda, and I don't feel prepared to vote on anything now. I don't think that's how this should work. An agenda item, monthly discipline update process is not a motion.
So it was a topic for a possible motion, and that could be my bad for writing it improperly. Do you want to elaborate on what would have been the better agenda topic to have?
I'll just stop with, I am not prepared to vote on this motion now. I did not understand that that's what those 4 words meant we would be voting on tonight. I've not discussed with other people. I've not gathered any background information. I'm not prepared.
Okay. Thank you, John. Do any other council members have discussion points that they would like to raise?
If I can jump in, or I can wait till Steve goes. I can wait.
Wait, no, go ahead, go first.
Okay. I'll just state publicly, I'm certain, I said it earlier, right, that I'll provide updates every month. So however this vote goes is fine. I may abstain just because more of the principle of the matter, like principle PLE. So, I mean, let me make that clear. I do plan on providing discipline updates every month. I just want us to reflect on and think about the principle of the matter of like voting on a request for the principal to be preparing something and presenting something each month. Like that's, where does that go? There may be a precedent we've set in the past, and I think that's something for us to reflect on. I do prepare a report every month. I think that's pretty standard. But is that going to be a common thing? And then is that also enforceable? I'm not asking that to be answered. I'm just asking it as a reflective question. We could always follow up later. I don't want it to be a whole big back and forth, but like, what if we vote to have me do that and then I don't? I understand that you would possibly evaluate me based on that, and that makes sense to me. But, there's no, what's the enforcement on that? So it's just a principle of the matter that, you can ask me to report on things. I will take that input. I will always make a decision with Ms. Rowland. I don't know that it always warrants a vote, but I do commit to doing this one. I will be clear. Thank you. In some form, whatever the motion, Ms. Rowland and I can reflect on as well, what's most appropriate to share. That's all.
Thank you. Michelle, and then Rosalind, I just wanted to let you know that because you had introduced the discussion topic, we need to give everyone a chance to speak first before we go to round 2s. So Michelle, I see your hand raised.
I think Steve was gonna go, so I don't know if Steve wants to go first.
Right.
I'll go real quick.
You're up.
So I just wanted, and Rosalind can answer this in the second round, but I wanted to know what the difference of what the request is and compared to how he's presenting this information right now. So like what difference, what are you looking for him to do that he's not doing right now with that information? That's my first question. But then, I mean, I understand where Rosalind's coming from, because I mean, it's just a matter of the information that they're getting downtown and compared to, information that downtown has like on the website and all that good stuff in comparison to what's going on at the school. If there's a difference, I can understand her wanting to get a report on that. But I just wanted to know what Mr. Graves can do if, let's say we don't vote, or there's a no vote, or whatever the deal is. What can Mr. Graves do differently than what he's doing right now to get that information to us? That's really what I'm asking.
Thank you, Steve. Michelle?
Yeah, I kind of had a similar question, like Steve had. Like, it seemed in Mr. Graves' report that he did kind of touch on behavior and what, how many infractions there were, like, in the month or so. So just kind of wondering what kind of details you're really looking for in that report, because I also feel like, we can't maybe go into certain specifics, like private student specifics in some of that report. So just
Stay in the
curious as
second or
to
third lane from
what
right.
you're looking for, and then how is that information going, like, what is that going to really inform us as a committee to do with that information, I guess, if that makes sense. Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Michelle. Are there any other council members who wish to speak before we go to round two? I know that I have something that I would like to say as well. Rachel, go ahead.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I think it's a similar question. Like, I think trying to identify what are we not getting. Is there something we feel like we aren't getting and that we need to vote in order to get that information? I think that's where I feel a little, I don't feel like in the past we voted on requests for information. So I support the idea of having a discipline update that is informative and helpful to us each month, but I'm not sure if a vote on that is or needed.
Is there anyone else who hasn't spoken?
No.
Steve, what?
Can I think people are misunderstanding what I meant by that. Like, I'm not saying that we don't need to vote on it. I'm just asking, what is it that we can ask the principal to put into that if we do not vote? So if there's no vote on this, then what can we ask Mr. Graves to put into his report that informs us about these issues at the school? That's what I was saying. So I wasn't really saying we shouldn't vote. So just wanted to clarify that point too.
Thanks, Steve. I wanted to make sure that we got to everyone on the council who didn't get a chance to speak first before we go to second speakers. So I'm fine to speak last for the council round one. I'm just looking, Uriah, Danny, Jason, Lourdes, didn't either of you have anything that you wanted to share before we go to round two? Lourdes?
I'm just thinking the same as some of the other council members, is if Mr. Graves can provide us with the data same way he did right now in his principal's report, I think that will be fine for us to have, because I'm worried about what the specifics will be if he goes into further details. So if we can still have it the way he presented it now, I think that's fine. And if we have any concerns, we can then address it to him from there, if that makes sense.
Thank you, Lourdes. Uriah and Jason.
I would probably double down on what Lourdes said. I think the information that was presented today was adequate. I don't, because I think it's definitely going to seep into like confidentiality, because we only had 9 infractions. If you go into more level of detail, like each month, I could just see that. I don't know, I'm a logical guy. I could almost like, connect the dots easily, and I don't want to infringe on the confidentiality if that's a risk.
Thank you, Uriah. Danny, Jason, do you have anything that you want to share before we go to round two?
I'm okay right now.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everybody else is saying. I think what he reports is sufficient, but yeah.
Thanks, Danny. My last point was going to be, this is my first time speaking on this round. I
use the right 2 lanes to take the exit toward Ida B. Wells Drive and Eisenhower Expressway.
What I think might be a unifying point for the council is that, as it was written on the agenda, what is our monthly discipline update process? And do we need a vote to solidify that if Mr. Graves and Ms. Rowland are willing to consistently give us a very specific update, and furthermore, collaborate with the council in between monthly meeting reports to address any specific council concerns, which has been our process currently. For anyone on the call who is a member of the public or who is watching this recording and is not familiar, Typically, the way that Mr. Graves puts together his principal's report, he does go out to the council throughout the month. First, as a follow-up from the meeting, we begin our question and, oh, could you talk about this next month cycle of engaging with Mr. Graves, and oftentimes Ms. Rowland gets pulled into that. In preparation for this month, the council had an opportunity to connect with Mr. Graves after he shared the topics that would be on his report, and for us to submit our questions for him specifically to address within those topics. And frequently council members also will suggest topics to Mr. Graves that they would like to see him address within his principal's report. And in terms of putting together the agenda, I try to take all council members' input, and I try
Use
to
the
be as
right lane
inclusive
to
as
keep
possible.
right to
If
merge
someone
onto
brings up
Ida
a
B.
topic
Wells
that they would like to
Drive.
hear discussed, I feel it's important to hear us discuss that topic. So explaining that, understanding that, I feel like there is a possible amendment to this motion, which could be simply that the council would like to see an ongoing monthly discipline update that Mr. Graves and Ms. Rowland have the flexibility to address. That being
Keep
said,
right.
because Mr. Graves has already said that he is willing to do that on a monthly basis, I am not sure if a vote is necessary to hold Mr. Graves to that. With that being said, we will go to round
Stay
two.
in the second lane from right.
And let's try and keep those comments briefer. Jason, if you want to moderate in time, that's fine. I also feel like I'm trying to keep an eye on the clock as well. Rosalind, you are up. And then I know, Steve, that you had started to address something.
Okay, so thank you everyone for your comments. I hear everyone's comment that, well, he did it tonight, so why do we need a vote
Use
on
the
it?
right lane to take the exit onto
Because this is
Franklin
the
Street.
first month he's ever done this. And this was only after we had all of these concerns from the community about discipline. We had these 2 town halls about discipline. And I, as an LSC member, realized we have no documentation that we can go back as a council and look at and
Take the
say,
exit.
well,
Then keep
is
right
it
onto
true that
Franklin
there's
Street.
more discipline problems now than there is before? Or is that not true? We don't have any numbers that we can look at. So
Keep
what
right
do
onto Franklin Street.
So how do we respond to the public with no numbers? And how do we adequately evaluate him without any statistics whatsoever in this category? Just to echo what Kat said, it is on the agenda as a possible motion. I don't have, as the
In half a
FOIA
mile, turn
OMA
right
officer,
onto West
I don't
Washington
have
Street.
any disagreement with us actually voting on it because it is on the agenda as a possible motion. Previously, we have asked Mr. Grave to give us a update on the equity task force. Previously, we've asked him to give us an update on the COVID safety team. And what would happen is he would give us an update for maybe 2 months or 3 months, and then all of a sudden it would disappear. And listen, I know he's got 1,000 things on his plate right now, okay? But when people are saying, well, what's the difference between him agreeing to do it voluntarily and us taking the vote on it? The difference is what happened with the updates on the COVID safety team and the equity task force is that if we actually have a vote on it, we can go back and we could say, hey, you know, you haven't given us an update on discipline in 2 months. We really need you to do that now. The council voted on it and we need you to honor the request of the council. So I'm not asking for anything confidential. Those of you who know what I do for a living, I am very concerned about confidentiality, okay? I'm asking that he disclose to us only the information that would be publicly available if it was being put in Aspen the way it should be. So when you look up LaSalle on the cps.edu website, there's a tab where you should be able to go and you should be able to see how many discipline infractions have been reported at that school last year. And our school is not accurate with that information. So that I'm not asking for anything student specific. I'm asking for high level information that is open to the public and should be on the website, on the CPS website anyway.
Thank you, Rosalind. Steve, I see that your hand is up.
Yeah, I'll keep it brief. So just wondering if Mr. Graves would just, I mean, instead of like, if we don't vote on it, could we have a report on discipline a detailed report on discipline every single month then. You know what I mean? Like every month that we're here, you answer Rosalind's questions, because I get the feeling that people don't want to vote on this thing. But I totally agree with what Rosalind is saying. What happens at the school, it needs to add up with what's going with what we see online. So I agree with that. The confidentiality, I never for one second thought that she was trying to get information about a certain kid and, something that's happening with a kid in particular, or a particular kid. So what I'm really saying is if Mr. Graves can just give us this type of detailed
At the light,
report,
turn right
but
onto
also
West
be conscious
Washington Street.
of
Then turn left onto North
him,
LaSalle Street.
the previous reports not being as detailed, if that makes any sense to anyone. So if we're not going to vote on it, can Mr. Graves just say, yeah, I'll give you guys a detailed report on a discipline from infractions levels 3, 4, and 5, something like that? Because I understand what Rosalind is saying. But I just don't think the council quite understands what she's saying. So if we don't vote on it, I also ask Mr. Graves, you just continue with the detailed briefing on what's going on in the school. Ooh, I got teachers responding. Let's hear what you guys got to say. That's what I'm talking about.
All right, thank you, Steve. I guess I'm just going to ask out of courtesy, Mr. Graves, because this is impacting your principal's report. Do you feel that you need to speak before Michelle and Zoe, or do you want to hear them first? Okay, Michelle and then Zoe.
Sorry, I'm losing my train of thought. But I agree that I think the principal or the behavior reports, just a monthly update is nice to have and hear. So I think if Mr. Graves wants to continue to put those in a monthly update, I think that's great. I guess I have more of a question. So is the purpose of receiving the behavior updates so that we can evaluate Mr. Graves on it in his principal evaluation? And then how
in a quarter mile, turn right onto West Wacker Drive.
From Mr. Graves, what we got today, how is that really informing us? I guess I'm just not really connecting on how that we can use what he's giving us to really reflect on his role as a principal, because behaviors happen in the classroom. I think it's more about
go past this light, then at the
how
next
those
one,
behaviors are
turn
being
right.
handled. And I think just as a teacher at this school, I see a lot of those behaviors are being handled in a restorative way, just from
at the light,
what I've
turn
seen.
right onto
So
West Wacker Drive.
I don't know. I guess that's more of my comment. Is that why we're having this discussion? Is that we want this behavior update so that it's something that we can reflect on in the principal evaluation?
Go past this light, then at the next one, turn left.
Thanks, Michelle. Zoe?
Okay, I just wanted to just share kind of the thought process that I'm going through. I think that we're all on the same page that being informed about discipline is important. And I know, Rosalind, you mentioned the different updates from different teams. And so the way that I see things is there's always core priorities that we're going to have as a council, but we also have seen things shift and ebb and flow over time. So in regards to the COVID safety team, that was a big update to have when, there was a transition back to school and, the whole mask thing and the vaccines. And so that was, hot and heavy during that time. And we know that there's been, talk with, I don't teach upstairs, so I don't know, the older kids, the 5th and the 6th and, the older kids incidents that have happened up there, and they've had meetings. So now, that priority is now being shifted higher on on the, on the Tatum poll or whatever. So I just see it as Mr. Graves is telling us that he will be willing to give us that information. And I feel if it becomes a problem
in 1.7 miles, turn left onto West North Avenue.
But I think since it's only been asked of him for this meeting, it can't be a problem yet. And then we can see in April and May and June to the end of the year that if he's providing those reports to us and we know he's doing his due diligence, it's not a problem. But if not, then we do reconsider adding a actual motion so that, that can be held. That's my thought.
Thank you, Zoe. Mr. Graves, Rachel and I also have things to say. I don't know if you wanted to hear us first or if you wanted to speak.
Mine is simple. It's not even about this. I just want to put it like in the notes, on the record, whatever. I don't know if it ends up in the notes. Rosalind, I want to follow up to find out more. We don't need to discuss it tonight because it's not relevant for tonight's vote. But where you're seeing discipline data displayed publicly, I want to make sure we're seeing the same thing, because that scares me that something isn't posting publicly when I know we are up to date internally in Aspen. Like we've always put in high level infractions in the Aspen reporting system. So I'm curious to know more. So I'll send you an email, Rosalind, so we can maybe like you could send me a screenshot of what you're seeing, and I'll probably go, oh, that makes me think of this or that. That's all. Thank you. Just look forward to the follow-up. Thanks.
Rachel, did you want to go or do you want me to go?
I can go. It's short. I wanted to say thank you, Zoe. You did a good job of like articulating the thought process, because I think we are all on the same page. Like Rosalind, I support what you're saying. I think it's helpful to have the information. I think it's helpful to have the information over time. But I think if we go on past process, I don't think I have alwaif always felt like if there's something that comes up that we request to have in the principal report, that it is addressed. So I agree with what Zoe was saying, that if this is an important issue at the moment and we want this information, and if we feel like it's not being addressed, we can pursue some kind of vote in the future. But I do feel like the process we've been following has been successful in terms of getting information that's helpful to us as a council.
Rachel, I'm glad you spoke first, because I just want to echo what you say. So that's faster. And then I also wanted to address, so yeah, double down on what Rachel says. I like that term, Uriah, I'm going to steal it. Michelle, what you said about the principal evaluation and how this data is helping us to evaluate the principal. I think you hit on a really important topic around strategy and our monthly discipline update process. I like personally keeping it broad so that Mr. Graves and Ms. Rowland are flexible to adapt to the highest needs for the discipline update process. And I appreciate that Ms. Rowland is also already simultaneously scheduling these ongoing monthly town halls that give the entire community a chance to ask questions in advance, have those questions addressed in the town halls. So I feel like if it's the information that we're seeking, we are getting that information. If it is the data that we are seeking, those requests were made by the council this month specifically because of elevated concerns in the community around discipline, and they were met and answered. So in terms of how is our monthly discipline update process working as a council, I think that we've had a reflective discussion around that point. And I am not sure if we necessarily even need to amend the motion. I think we can just do a vote on Rosalind's original motion. And then if somebody feels the need to make a second motion, that's fine. But I just wanted to clarify that point. Is there anyone else who needs to speak on this topic? All right.
I just want to say that principal evaluation, that's not the reason why I care. All I care about is that if there is a discrepancy from what's going on at the school in downtown or on the web, that's all I really care about. The principal evaluation, that's not, I just want everyone to know that's not the reasoning that I'm saying what I'm saying. But
in
whatever.
1 mile, turn left onto West North Avenue.
Thank you, Steve. All right, so council.
Pat, when you say, is there anybody else?
I meant for our 2 rounds. We were giving every council member around 1 to speak and then around 2 to speak. And so I think we've discussed this motion. And if after we discuss this motion, someone feels the need to make a second motion, we can do that. But right now, the topic of monthly discipline update process, I feel has given everybody 2 opportunities who wanted to speak a chance to speak. And the motion that is a live motion for voting upon is Zoe, actually, do you want to read it? Because it was long. It was about the category 345 student code of conduct. Discipline updates.
Yes. So the category was that Rosalind makes a motion that beginning of April 2022, Mr. Graves includes a monthly report about discipline, which includes incidents from category 3, 4, and 5 from the student code of conduct. Rosalind, would you say that's accurate? I want to make sure. Okay. It's like, I'm getting better. I'm getting better at my secretary skills, my typing skills.
You're amazing at secretary. Are you kidding me?
My typing skills are improving, you know?
You're doing awesome. Thank you. So that is the vote. All those in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Go past this light. Then at the next one, turn left.
I see 3 aye votes. All those abstaining. 1, 2, 3, 7, 8, 9. I see 9 abstentions. All those objecting.
At the light, turn left onto West North Avenue.
Objections.
Then turn right onto North Park
Original
Avenue.
motion does not pass. Before we move on to our next discussion topic, are there any council members who feel the need to make a motion about this topic? All right, so in conclusion, I think it sounds like Mr. Graves, we will continue